This could be your last night.
We cannot come. Mom is fine. My wife is throwing a birthday party, and we cannot just abandon our guests. Those were the exact words Torren said to the doctor when he was informed that I was dying. Literally dying. My heart had already failed 3 separate times in the ambulance, and yet my 42-year-old son still chose Carindra's appetizers over his own mother's life. I lie here, hooked up to cold, blinking machines that keep my heart beating artificially, staring blankly at the sterile ceiling of this hospital room that feels more like a prison cell. It is 2 o'clock in the morning, and I am completely alone. The heart monitor beeps in sharp, erratic intervals, each beat reminding me that it could very well be my last. Meanwhile, my sons are only 30 meters away, clinking champagne glasses as if nothing had happened. The sharp scent of disinfectant mixes in my nostrils with the bitter metallic taste that has lingered in my mouth since I regained consciousness after emergency surgery. My hands tremble violently each time I try to move them. And it is not just the medication. It is the fury coursing through my blood like venom, pure and undiluted. Mrs. Stone, please try to rest, whispers Nerese, the night shift nurse. She's a young woman, perhaps the same age as my daughters-in-law, yet her eyes reflect a kind of genuine compassion I have not seen in my own family for years. Before we go on, do not forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We bring you new stories every day. Hit like and let us know what city you are watching from in the comments. The doctor said the most important thing now is for you to stay calm. Calm. How am I supposed to be calm when I just discovered that to my own children, I rank lower than a party doctor? Langford had been very specific when he informed me of the calls 2 hours ago. His words still echo in my mind like hammer blows. I told them clearly, this could be your last night. The heart attack was severe. We needed them to come immediately. Dreven's reply was even more devastating than his brother's. Doctor, she cannot wait until tomorrow. Salise planned everything weeks ago, and all the guests are already here. My mom is strong. She always recovers from everything. I have always recovered from everything. That line keeps replaying in my head like a cruel, ironic lullaby. I recovered when their father, Cavil, walked out 25 years ago, leaving me alone with 2 teenage boys and mountains of debt. I recovered when I had to work 3 different jobs just to get them through private college, scrubbing office floors at dawn, waiting tables at a diner during the day, and sewing clothes late into the night. My fingers still carry the scars from the sewing machine needles. I recovered when I sold my beloved little greenhouse, the one with the garden where they both grew up, to help Torren make the down payment on his own place. It is just temporary, Mom, he had told me. I will pay you back in 2 years. That was 8 years ago. I recovered when I handed over my entire life savings, $28,000 that I had carefully put aside penny by penny over the decades to fund Dreven's business idea that never took off. It is a safe investment, Mom, he had promised. In 6 months, I will pay you back everything with interest. The business collapsed within 3 months. I recovered when Carindra looked me in the eyes at last year's Christmas dinner and announced right in front of everyone that my olive green dress was not appropriate for the occasion and that I should try dressing more my age. I recovered when Salise decided that my home-cooked Sunday dinners were simply too much effort, and it would be better for everyone if they just ordered takeout from now on. I recovered when they slowly began excluding me from family gatherings, because you know how Grandma always wants to give her opinion on everything. But this is different. This time, it is not about forgotten birthdays or ignored messages. This time, it is not about money lost or small humiliations brushed aside. This time, it is about something I simply cannot recover. It is the understanding, the unbearable truth that when it truly mattered, when my life was hanging by a fragile thread, they chose to stay at a party. Dr. Langford had explained everything to me in a somber, measured voice. Mrs. Stone, you experienced 3 cardiac arrests during transport. The paramedics succeeded in resuscitating you, but technically, you were dead for 4 entire minutes. It is a miracle that you are here talking to me. 4 minutes dead, and my children were concerned about not ruining pink party decorations. The door to my hospital room remains tightly shut. No worried calls during the past 5 hours since I regained consciousness. No text messages, only the ceaseless beeping of machines keeping my body alive and the loud, cruel echo of their words. We cannot. My wife is throwing a party. Nerisse checks my vitals at the top of every hour. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, she says gently, with genuine concern. Are you thinking about something that's making you anxious? If only she knew that I am thinking about 66 years of unconditional love swept aside for a birthday cake and a few colorful balloons. At this exact moment, as I stare at the blurry shimmer of city lights beyond the hospital window, something inside me is breaking. Not my heart. No, something far deeper. It is the final quiet drop of hope I had left, the tiny ember, that maybe, just maybe, I still mattered to someone in this world. Tomorrow they will call. I am sure they will eventually show up with cheap supermarket flowers and carefully rehearsed excuses. They will say they did not understand the seriousness, that they thought this was just another one of my dramatic exaggerations, like when I fell and fractured my wrist last year, and it took them 3 full days to come visit. But now it is too late. Tonight they have shown me exactly where I stand on their priority list. And that place is very, very low. I close my eyes and drift backward, almost instinctively, 4 decades into the past. Torren was just 2 years old, and Drevin had only recently been born. We were living in that cramped little 2-bedroom house in the lakeside neighborhood, the one with walls so thin I could hear our neighbors breathing. Cavil, my husband at the time, worked long hours at the textile factory, and I stayed home devoted to raising the children. I remember perfectly the soft scent of baby powder and the cheerful sound of their giggles when I bathed them in that old second-hand plastic tub we had bought together. Torren was always the one who clung to me the most. Mommy, mommy, he would chant all day, trailing after me on those adorably chubby little legs. Drevin was more self-sufficient even as a baby. But the moment he fell ill, he transformed into my constant companion, asking me to hum that lullaby I had learned from my own mother back when I was just a girl. Everything for my children I would whisper to myself as I sewed clothes until 3 o'clock in the morning, just to have something to sell at the weekend market. Every single extra dollar went straight into their needs. New shoes, whenever their feet grew school supplies when the academic year began. Torren's soccer classes, Drevin's guitar lessons. I wore the same faded gray dress for 2 years without complaint, but they were always immaculate. Hair-combed uniforms, pressed backpacks full. Then came the first sign that something was shifting, subtly but unmistakably, in the dynamic between us. It happened when Torren turned 25. He had met Carindra at work, a woman with a polished presence, flawless smile, and manicured nails that never seemed out of place. The first time he brought her over for dinner, she examined my house like she was evaluating a crumbling property. "Margarine," she said with a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Do you not think it would be better if Torren and I spent Christmas at my place this year? My family has very strong traditions, and well, my mother is used to doing things a certain way. That Christmas, I ate alone for the very first time in 25 years. The turkey I had spent my savings on sat untouched in the refrigerator for an entire week. When I later asked Torren how dinner had gone, he said, 'It was amazing, Mom. Carindra's house is spectacular. It has a dining room that looks like it belongs in a magazine. And the food, well, her mom is a really good cook,' as if my 30 years of meals, memories, and burned fingers had meant nothing. Dreven followed the same pattern 2 years later. Celise was unlike Carindra, softer in her tactics, more delicate in her methods. She never excluded me outright. Instead, she offered little comments, small calculated remarks that over time pooled like raindrops, forming a quiet puddle of insecurity. "Oh, Margarine, what a charming red sweater you have," she would say, with a gentle yet unmistakably condescending smile. "It's very vintage, is it not? I always tell Dreven that women our age really should update their wardrobes every now and then." Or when I brought out my famous lasagna, the one I had perfected over decades of trial and error. "It's good mother-in-law," she'd nod politely, "although it's a little heavy for my digestion. I prefer lighter, more modern food now." Dreven had become accustomed to my cooking style over the years, but even that familiarity did not stop the invitations to family dinners from becoming fewer and farther between. At first, it was subtle. "Celise is not feeling well and prefers something more intimate," they said. Then came the next excuse: the kids have too much homework and they really need some peace and quiet to focus. Eventually, they just stopped inviting me altogether. Velda, my lifelong neighbor and dear friend, finally said it to me straight one afternoon while we were sharing a quiet coffee at her kitchen table. "Margarine, sweetheart, your daughters-in-law are slowly pushing you away from your sons. It is the oldest story in the book. I have seen this play out 1,000 times, but I still refuse to believe it." "They are good girls, Velda," I insisted. "They just need a little more time to fully adapt to the family." "Adapt," she scoffed gently. "They have been married for 5 years, Margarine. They are already adapted. What they have done is adapt you into the role of a grandmother who only shows up for emergencies and knows to leave quietly." She was right, painfully right. But it hurt more to admit it aloud. I had begun to feel like a stranger inside the very lives I had once sacrificed everything to nurture. Phone conversations with them became painfully mechanical. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "Good. We are too." "Okay, we will call you later. We are a bit busy." The hardest blow came 2 years ago when I sold my home to help Torren. Carindra had found what she called her dream house in an exclusive, gated neighborhood, but they were short $100,000 for the down payment. Mom Torren said in that familiar voice he used as a child whenever he wanted something from me, "I know it is a lot to ask, but this is our shot. It is an amazing opportunity. In 5 years, this house will be worth double." So I sold my little green house, the one where I had raised my boys, the one where their heights were lovingly marked along the door frame, the one where they took their first shaky steps into the world. I moved into a tiny apartment in an old building with no elevator, but they had their dream home. The first time I visited them, in that new house, Carindra greeted me at the door with a stiff smile. "Margarine, what a surprise. You should have called first. We are expecting some friends for dinner." She did not invite me in. I stood there awkwardly on the threshold of the very house I had helped them buy, feeling more like a door-to-door salesperson who had arrived at the worst possible moment. "I just came to bring you this," I said softly, handing her a chocolate cake I had made especially for them. It was Torren's favorite since he was a little boy. "Oh, how nice," she said flatly. "But you know, we are trying to eat healthier now. Torren is being very cautious after that cholesterol scare." She held the cake like it was something contaminated. That night, I cried myself to sleep. My son was having health problems, and I had only found out by chance through a brief conversation at the door of a house I helped finance. With Drevin, the situation unfolded differently, but it was no less painful. He had always been more direct, far less diplomatic than his older brother, so when his electronics import business began to falter, he came right out and said it. "Mom, I need $8,000. It is to save the business. If I do not get the money this week, I will have to shut everything down, and I will be drowning in debt for years," Drevin told me, with a tone of desperation I had not heard since he was a boy. It was everything I had, every last dollar I had saved by cleaning offices before sunrise, every single coin I had tucked away from my pension over the past 10 years. But he was my son, my baby, whom I had carried in my arms for entire nights when he burned with fever and cried into my chest. "I will lend it to you, my son," I said quietly, "but I need you to sign a promissory note. It is not that I do not trust you. It is simply to keep everything in proper order." Celise was scandalized. "A promissory note? Seriously? Margarine, you are going to charge your own son interest. What kind of mother does something like that?" In the end, I gave him the money without asking for any paperwork. "He is your son," I reminded myself. "He knows what that money represents to you." The business collapsed after just 3 months. The $8,000 disappeared, along with years of sacrifice and the fragile dream of having a dignified, peaceful old age. Drevin looked at me and said, "Mom, you know how these businesses go. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. At least I gave it a shot, as if my hard-earned savings had been casino chips, as if decades of labor exhaustion and self-denial were just a game. Now connected to these machines in this cold, indifferent hospital room, I understand something I had not wanted to see before. All those moments, all those quiet betrayals were preparing me for this night. This night when the masks would finally fall, and I would see the raw, naked truth. To my children, I am dispensable. The pain had started 3 days earlier during Sunday lunch at Torren's house. It was my 66th birthday, though no one appeared to have remembered that small detail. Carindra had prepared a light salad and some grilled chicken. Nothing remotely like the grand feasts I used to prepare when they were little, and birthdays meant balloons, music, and cake. "Mom, you look tired," Drevin said casually, barely glancing up from his phone while picking at his plate. "Are you sleeping okay?" The truth was, I had not slept well in weeks. A strange, crushing pressure in my chest would jolt me awake every night at precisely 3 o'clock in the morning, like someone was sitting squarely on my ribs. But I chose not to tell them. I did not want them to think it was just another one of my exaggerations, as they had begun labeling all my ailments. "I am fine, honey. Just a bit of heartburn at night," I lied. Carindra let out a dry chuckle. "At our age, the body just does not process food the same anymore, Margarine. I keep telling my mom to eat lighter. Less fat, fewer spices." A 66-year-old woman's body is not the same as a 30-year-old's. That afternoon, as I was putting on my coat to leave, Celise arrived with news that shattered me without even realizing it. Guess what she said cheerfully? We finally got a date for my birthday party. It is going to be this Wednesday at the Grand Plaza Hotel Ballroom. I have been planning it for months. Wednesday, my actual birthday, had been that day, that very Sunday, and no one mentioned it, not a single word. But on Wednesday, they were going to celebrate Celise in full pomp and grandeur. It is going to be amazing, she continued, her face glowing with anticipation. I hired the best catering service in the entire city. There is going to be live music, custom-themed decorations, and over 50 confirmed guests. Celise beamed with excitement. Drevin gave me this gorgeous golden dress that cost $1,200. $1,200 for a single dress. More than I spend on clothes over the course of 2 full years. I remained silent, the pressure in my chest steadily intensifying as I watched my son grin proudly for having spent, in one evening, what keeps me afloat for half a year. Mom, of course you are invited, Drevin had told me. But the tone of his voice felt more like an obligation than a heartfelt invitation. Though you know, it is going to be a very elegant affair. Celise has invited a lot of important people from her work. The message was crystal clear. Come if you must, but please do not embarrass us. On Tuesday night, just one day before Celise's grand celebration, the pressure in my chest had reached a terrifying peak. My left arm throbbed and waves of nausea doubled me over in bed. At 11 o'clock at night, I called Torren. Mom, what is wrong? We are watching a movie. My son, I feel really sick. There is a tight pain in my chest that will not go away. Did you take anything? Chamomile tea, maybe? It could be stress. You have been tense lately with all the party planning and everything. Look, we will stop by tomorrow after the celebration to check on you. I hung up the phone with trembling hands, feeling more isolated and insignificant than ever before. Even my pain had to wait until my daughter-in-law's party was over. That night, I did not sleep at all, not for a single minute. The pain crept up into my jaw, then into my neck, down my back. It felt like a giant invisible band was wrapped around my torso, tightening, constricting. At 5 a.m, I called Velda. My dear, that does not sound good at all, she said immediately after hearing my symptoms. I am coming over right now and taking you straight to the hospital. No, Velda. It is Wednesday. It is Celise's party. I do not want to ruin what margarine. You are describing textbook heart attack symptoms. Do you honestly believe that a party is more important than your life? It turns out it was. It turns out that for my children, a party really was more important than whether I lived or died. Velda arrived at my apartment by 6 o'clock sharp. She found me sitting on the edge of my bed, drenched in cold sweat, my breathing ragged and shallow. We are going to the hospital right now, she said firmly, using the kind of no-nonsense tone only true friends have. In the taxi on the way there, the pain exploded to a level I did not think was possible. It felt like a serrated knife was being shoved into the center of my chest, then slowly twisted with each breath. I squeezed Velda's hand with everything I had left in me. Hang in there, Margarine. We are almost there. In the emergency room, everything moved in a blur. The electrocardiogram revealed dangerous irregularities. My blood pressure was through the roof, and the cardiac enzyme levels confirmed what the doctors had already feared. You are having a massive heart attack. We need to operate immediately, Dr. Langford told me as he prepared the gurney to rush me into surgery. Is there anyone we can call? Close family. With a voice strained by pain, sedatives, and exhaustion, I gave them my children's numbers. Please tell them it is urgent. They must come now. Velda never left my side. She held my hand tightly until the nurses came to take me away to the operating room. "I will stay here until you come out," she whispered. Her voice filled with warmth and resolve. "My dear, you are not alone." But I was. As the anesthesia began to pull me under, the last thing on my mind, just before the darkness closed in, was the image of my children getting ready for a party while I was fighting for my life. 6 hours later, I woke up to the soft beeping of machines. Nerys was at my side, checking my vital signs. Velda was asleep in the chair beside my bed, her head resting on her folded arms. My children were conspicuously absent. Did my children call? It was the very first thing I asked, but from Nerys's expression, I already sensed the answer. "The doctor spoke with them during the surgery," she said gently. "He explained that you had 3 cardiac arrests, that the situation was critical, that they needed to come immediately." My heart, already weakened by trauma and medication, shrank further under the weight of her words. "And what did they say?" I asked, afraid of the answer. Nerys hesitated. She clearly did not want to be the one to carry this burden. But I needed to hear it. I needed the truth. "Your oldest son said they were at a very important party and that they could not leave their guests unattended, that you had always been strong and they were confident you would pull through." Tears began to roll down my cheeks before I could even stop them. It was not just the pain of surgery. It was something far deeper, the pain of discovering that Salisa's party, with her $1,200 golden dress and her perfectly plated appetizers, was worth more than all the years I had dedicated to raising them. Your youngest son, Nerys, continued in a soft, almost apologetic tone, asked if they could come the next morning once the celebration was over. Velda stirred and woke upon hearing my muffled sobs. She immediately rushed to my side. "My dear, what happened? Are you in pain?" "Everything hurts, Velda," I whispered. "It hurts to realize I have spent my entire life loving 2 children who would rather attend a party than know if their mother is going to make it through the night." At that moment, staring at the hospital ceiling at 3 in the morning, while my children toasted with champagne just 30 meters away, I made a quiet but irreversible decision, one that would alter everything going forward. The next 3 days were a relentless roller coaster of emotions I never thought I would be forced to experience. Every hour that passed without a single phone call from my children felt like another stab deeper and colder into a heart that was already quite literally broken. Nerys had begun to avoid eye contact with me entirely, especially when I asked her if anyone had called or checked in to ask about my condition. On Thursday morning, a full 24 hours after Salisa's extravagant party, the hospital room phone finally rang. My heart raced so violently that the monitor next to me started beeping in alarm. It was Torren. "Mom, how are you? We just found out you were in the hospital. Why did not you tell us anything?" Blood surged to my head. After everything that had happened after the doctors had called them multiple times, he had the audacity to ask me why I had not said anything. "Torren," I said slowly, my voice sounding foreign even to myself. "The doctors called you on Wednesday. They told you I was dying. They said it was urgent that you needed to come immediately." There was an awkward pause on the other end of the line, a silence full of guilt or perhaps just inconvenience. "Oh yeah. Well, Salisa's party was really important. People had come from very far away. We could not just cancel everything. Besides, you have always been very strong, Mom. We figured it could wait a few hours." A few hours. My life could wait a few hours. "Mom, do not be dramatic. You are fine now, right?" The doctor said the surgery went well. "Look, We will stop by Sunday after lunch. Does that work? Sunday. 3 full days away. My first heart attack could apparently wait until after Sunday lunch. I hung up. I did not even say goodbye. Nerisse, who had been pretending to organize medications on the counter to give me some semblance of privacy, approached with worry written across her face. Mrs. Stone, your blood pressure just skyrocketed. Are you feeling okay? No, Nerisse, I am not okay, and honestly, I do not think I will ever be okay again. That very afternoon, Drevin showed up, but he did not come alone. Celise walked in beside him, radiant glowing after the triumph of her successful celebration. She wore sparkling golden earrings that matched the infamous dress she had flaunted at the party, her makeup applied flawlessly. Meanwhile, I lay in bed with greasy hair, a stained hospital gown clinging to my frame, and tubes protruding from both of my arms. Mother-in-law, how are you? You really gave us a scare, Celisa said, smiling politely, though her eyes remained curiously empty. Drevin told me what happened. What a shame it had to happen on the day of my party, right? Bad luck. As though my heart attack had been a poorly timed inconvenience planned specifically to sabotage her celebration. The party was incredible, Mom Drevin added proudly, settling into the chair furthest from my bedside. You should have seen the decorations. Celise truly outdid herself. Over 60 people came, including Celisa's boss and several important clients from my office. He was talking about the party, about decorations, about networking, while I had been literally fighting for my life. What would you do if you were in her place, facing a moment of life and death while your children partied blocks away? Comment below. Even a simple one, if it hurts just reading this. How are you feeling? Celise asked me next, her tone clearly expecting a short, convenient answer. You look much better than we expected. Doctors these days really do perform miracles, do not they? The doctor said I had 3 cardiac arrests, I replied calmly, watching their faces closely. I was clinically dead for 4 entire minutes. Drevin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, but it is over now, Mom. The important thing is that you are alive and recovering, Celise said, adjusting one of her golden earrings. The important thing, I echoed back, slowly, feeling something solidify inside me, something heavy like cement hardening in my chest, is that while I was dying, you were eating appetizers and laughing with your guests. Celise frowned. Margarine, it is not fair for you to make us feel guilty. We did not know it was that serious. Besides, she added almost defensively, what exactly were we supposed to do at the hospital? We are not doctors. It made more sense for us to be where we could actually be useful organizing the party, which cost us a lot of money and effort. Useful. Organizing a party was apparently more useful than standing beside your dying mother-in-law. Look, Mom Drevin interrupted, trying to diffuse the tension. Celise and I talked, and we decided we are going to support you more. We can come by once a week, maybe on Sundays after lunch. And if you ever need something urgently, you can always call us. As long as it is not during working hours, or when we already have something important scheduled, once a week after lunch, as long as they did not have important commitments. That was the moment, staring into the face of my youngest son, hearing him speak to me like I was a task to be penciled into his calendar, when something inside me finally shattered. And no, it was not my heart this time. This time it was something much deeper. It was the last remaining shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, hidden deep inside them, there was still a flicker of the love I had poured into them across a lifetime. You know what I said, softly in a voice that sounded eerily calm, even to my own ears. "You are right. You should not feel guilty." Both of them visibly relaxed, assuming that I had finally come around to their point of view. "You should not feel guilty," I repeated, "because in order to feel guilt, you need to have a conscience, and it is very clear to me now that you lost yours a long time ago." Salisa's expression changed instantly. "Margarine, there is no need to be rude. We came here to support you, even though we have 1,000 other things going on. To support me, I asked and laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. You came here to fulfill the bare minimum social requirement, just enough to be able to say you visited your sick mother so you can sleep soundly at night, patting yourselves on the back for doing your good deed of the day." Drevin stood up, clearly irritated. "Mom, now you are being unfair. We already explained why we could not come earlier. Salisa's party was important for our future. We cannot just cancel our lives every time you have a health scare, every time I have a health problem." As if heart attacks were common colds, I caught for attention. "You are right, my son," I said, with a strange and icy calm washing over me. "You cannot cancel your life, and I will never ask you to again." That was the moment I realized maybe some of the best revenge stories are not about shouting or punishing. Maybe the most powerful revenge is reclaiming your peace, your silence, and your worth. Salise smiled, thinking she had won. "I am glad you understand, mother-in-law," Salisa said, with a tone that almost sounded rehearsed. "It is important that we all have healthy boundaries in family relationships." Healthy boundaries. What an elegant way to describe years of emotional abandonment and selective neglect. They stayed for about 10 more minutes, talking mainly to each other about their weekend plans, a trip they were arranging for next month, and the new rug Salise wanted to buy for the living room. I sat there a silent observer in my own room, listening to the whirlwind of their prosperous, busy lives. When they finally left offering vague promises about coming back soon, I was left alone again with only Nerisse and the growing weight of a revelation that was transforming something inside me entirely. Mrs. Stone Nerisse said gently as she checked my intravenous line, "I do not like how you look right now. Do you want me to call someone else?" "Do you have any other close family or friends?" "I have Velda," I replied after a pause. And apparently that is more than I truly had with my own children. That night, as the quiet sounds of the hospital hummed around me and the aching pain pulsed in my freshly stitched chest, I began to formulate something I never thought I would have to plan, something final, something that would make them understand the true cost of the choices they had made. That night, sleep did not come. It was not only the physical pain, though sharp and stabbing, but a strange kind of mental clarity, one I had not felt in decades. For the first time in so many years, I was seeing my life without the foggy filter of unconditional motherly love. I was finally seeing reality for what it truly was, not what I had desperately wished it could be. I sat up slowly in my hospital bed and asked Nerisse for a pen and some paper. "Are you going to write letters?" "Mrs. Stone," she asked sweetly, her voice filled with genuine care. Care I had come to appreciate more than the occasional dutiful visits from my own children. "Something like that," I answered softly. "I need to put my thoughts in order." I began to write, and the words came as though they had been caged inside me for years, waiting for this moment to finally escape. It was not just a letter. It was a full, unsparing inventory of my life, an emotional accounting I had never dared to perform until now. "Dear Torren and Drevin," I began, my hand trembling but determined. "For 66 years I have lived for you. Every decision I made, Every sacrifice I endured, every dream I silenced, it was all for your happiness and your comfort. Today, lying in this hospital bed, after having been clinically dead for 4 minutes, I have finally come to understand something painful. You have not lived even a single day thinking about mine. Tears spilled freely onto the page, smudging some of the ink, but I did not stop. I had 66 years of things to say, of truths to finally set free. When your father Cavill abandoned us, I was 35. You were 18 and 10 respectively. I was still young. I was still attractive. I had suitors, good men, who wanted to build a future with me. But I chose to stay alone, to dedicate every part of myself completely to both of you. I did not want any man to make you feel like you were a burden or that you were ever in the way. I sacrificed the possibility of having a partner, of having more children, of enjoying a full and reciprocal love life because you were always my absolute priority. I remembered Corwin Ellerby, the widower who used to live across the street and who brought me flowers every single Friday for years. He was a good man, a hard-working, patient soul who courted me gently with the steady presence of someone who understood the value of meaningful things. But I always told him I could not think about romance, not then. My children needed me more. He married another woman 5 years later, and I remained alone, raising both of you without complaint. I worked 3 jobs for 8 years to cover the tuition for your private college education. I kept writing as the memories continued to pour from me. I cleaned offices from 4 in the morning until 7. Then I worked at the diner from 8 o'clock until 4 in the afternoon. And after that, I sewed clothes from 6 in the evening until midnight. I slept only 3 hours a night from Monday to Saturday. Sundays were always reserved for you. I washed your clothes, cooked your favorite meals, helped you with your homework, took you to the park. Every detail, every moment I gave it all. My hands were starting to ache again, but I kept writing. It was as if putting it all on paper was finally giving weight, real, undeniable weight, to the decades of silent dedication no one ever acknowledged. Torren, when you married Carindra, I sold my house to help you with the down payment for yours. That little green house where you learned to walk, where we danced around a tiny Christmas tree, where you scraped your knees and ran into my arms, where we spent some of the best, most magical Christmases of our lives. I sold it without thinking twice because you said this was your chance to have a better life. So I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building without an elevator. But you had your dream home. That was what mattered then. I paused my writing to wipe my eyes. Nerys approached quietly, her expression gentle. "Are you feeling okay, Mrs. Stone? Your blood pressure is climbing again." "I am fine, honey," I told her softly. "For the first time in years, I am perfectly fine." I picked up the pen again and continued. "Dreven, when your business was collapsing, I lent you my life savings, $28,000. That was money I had saved, dollar by dollar, for a decade. I worked weekends until I was 70. I sold food at the entrance of my building. I pinched every penny of my pension. It was supposed to be my safety net, my peace of mind, a small shield so that if I ever got sick, I would not become a burden to anyone. But you needed that money, and I gave it to you without hesitation." The irony struck me like a slap in the face. I had spent all my financial security trying to ensure you would never see me as a burden. And now, that is exactly what you see. But none of that matters now. I wrote feeling that each sentence released a weight I had been carrying for far too long. What has truly killed me has never been the financial sacrifices. What truly killed me was not the surgeries or the pain it was discovering that on Wednesday, while I was fighting for my life on an operating table, you were raising glasses of champagne and smiling at a party. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to relive that humiliation once again. I needed to feel the full weight of that betrayal completely and without numbing it so that I could finally do what I had to do. The doctors called you at 2:00 in the afternoon. They told you my heart had stopped, that I had suffered multiple cardiac arrests, that my condition was critical. They literally said, "This could be your mother's last night," and your response that you could not come because there was a party, a birthday party with appetizers and live music. That was worth more than the life of the woman who brought you into the world with her bare hands and sleepless nights. The words blurred again as fresh tears fell onto the paper, but I kept writing. I had to finish this today. I understood something that night, something I should have realized years ago. You do not love me. Maybe you once did, back when you were children and still needed me. But that feeling, whatever it was, evaporated the moment you grew independent. Now I am merely an uncomfortable social obligation, a face you visit occasionally, a name you keep on your calendar so you can say you are a good son. My hand trembled as I began writing the next lines, because I knew deep in my bones that once I put these words on paper, there would be no turning back. And that was exactly why I had to do it. I have made a decision that will change all of our lives forever. I will no longer live as a mother, begging for scraps of attention from children who see her as a burden. I will not continue pretending that obligation visits and shallow courtesy calls are enough for me. I will not keep accepting that my life is worth less than a dinner reservation, a social event, or a weekend away. I paused to breathe. My chest ached, my pulse pounded, but I felt something I had not felt in years. It was not fear, it was freedom. When you read this letter, I will already be gone, completely gone from your lives. Do not look for me. You will not find me. I have decided to start over, somewhere far away, in a place where no one knows my history, where I can simply be Margarine, not the discarded mother who sacrificed everything for ungrateful children. Neris approached again. "Mrs. Stone, it is already 4 a.m. You really should get some rest. I am almost done, honey. Just a few more lines. I am not making this decision out of anger, but out of self-love. The same love I had given you all these years. I will now at last give fully to myself. I deserve to be surrounded by people who value my presence, who care deeply about my well-being, who choose to be with me, not merely tolerate me out of obligation." I was reaching the final lines of the letter, and with every word I wrote, I felt myself moving closer to a freedom I had not even known I had been seeking. Do not expect me to come back. Do not expect reconciliation, apologies, or closure. This is my definitive goodbye. Be happy in your beautifully busy lives, your elegant parties, your critical social obligations, your clearly stated priorities. I will be happy, far, far away from all of it, far away from you. I signed it in full, Margarine Whitlow, your mother until today. I folded the letter with care, smoothing the edges as if it were made of fragile silk, and tucked it neatly into the drawer of the nightstand beside my hospital bed. Tomorrow I would hand it to Velda with very specific instructions about when and how it should be delivered. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I drifted to sleep without shedding a single tear. On Friday morning, I woke up to a strange, almost electric sensation in my body. It was not the pain I had been carrying in my chest since the heart attack. No, it was something else entirely, a blend of nervousness and excitement that I had not felt in decades. It was the feeling of standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing I could finally fly. It was the feeling of preparing to reclaim control over my own life for the first time in years. Velda arrived early, just as she had done every day since the operation. She brought her usual thermos of homemade coffee and that kind, familiar smile that reminded me somewhere in this world at least one person truly and sincerely cared about me. "Good morning, my dear," she said as she placed the coffee on the side table. "How did you sleep? You look different today, more peaceful." "Velda, I need you to do me a very important favor," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Perhaps the most important thing I have ever asked of you in all these years of friendship." She sat down in the chair beside my bed, her expression immediately serious. "Tell me what you need, Margarine. You know I am here for anything." I reached into the drawer and handed her the envelope I had written in the quiet hours before sunrise. "I need you to give this to my sons," I said gently. "But not yet. Wait until Sunday afternoon when they come for their usual visit." Velda took the envelope carefully, her fingers wrapping around it as though she instinctively understood the weight it carried. "What is this, my dear? It is my freedom," I answered with a smile that surprised even me. "And I need you to help me with one more thing. I need you to help me disappear." Velda's eyes widened, instantly flooded with concern. "Margarine, what are you saying? Are you thinking of hurting yourself? Because if this is about—" No, I interrupted softly, taking her hand in mine with reassurance. "I am not talking about suicide, Velda. Not at all. I am talking about rebirth. I am talking about starting a completely new life, somewhere far from here, far from children who do not see me, far from this city, where every corner reminds me just how much I have given, and how very little I have received in return." Then with a calm I had not felt in years, I began to explain the entire plan. For hours, it had been forming clearly in my mind, like a blueprint I had been unknowingly sketching for years, as if my heart had been silently preparing me, as if my mind had been waiting patiently all this time to plan my own liberation. "I have money saved in an account that my children do not know exists," I told her quietly. "It is not much, but it is enough to get started. $8,000 saved little by little from my pension over the past 3 years, ever since Dreven lost all of my previous savings in his failed business venture. I have it tucked away at the National Bank in a private account that is solely in my name." Velda looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern swirling in her eyes. "But Margarine, where are you planning to go? Do you have any family in another city?" "I have a cousin in Dallas, Arletta," I replied. "We have not spoken in about 5 years, but I know she lives alone in a large house she inherited from her husband. I am going to write to her. I am sure she would take me in, at least for a while until I get settled." And it was true. Arletta had always been different from the rest of the family. She was fiercely independent, never married, never had children, and she always made it a point to tell me how much she admired my strength. In the few phone calls we shared over the years, she had gently hinted, more than once, that if I ever needed a change of scenery, her door would be open to me. The plan is simple. I continued outlining it clearly to Velda. On Sunday, when my sons come to visit, that will be the very last time they see me. After they leave, you will help me leave the hospital. I will not check out officially. I will simply walk away. I will leave the letter on the bed and vanish. "And what about your apartment, your belongings?" she asked softly. "I already spoke to Nerisse about that. Her sister is a lawyer, and she is going to help me draft a power of attorney so you can take care of everything for me. You can sell the furniture, keep anything you like, and use the rest to pay off the final months of rent until the lease ends. I never really liked that apartment anyway, I added with a small shrug. It always felt too small, too silent, too sad. Velda remained quiet for a long time, her brow furrowed as she processed every word I had said. Margarine, are you completely sure about this? This is a huge decision. Once you leave, it is going to be very hard to come back. I do not want to come back, Velda. That is the entire point. I want Torren and Dreven to finally feel what it is like to be abandoned by the very people they thought would always be there. I want them to understand what it is to search desperately for someone you love and find only silence. I want them to live with the guilt of losing their mother, not because she died, but because they chose a party over her life. The words left my mouth with such calmness and clarity, it shocked even me. It was as if decades of quiet, suppressed strength had been waiting for this moment to emerge. Besides, I continued, I am 66 years old, Velda. If I live to 80, I have 14 years left. Am I going to spend those years begging for scraps of attention from children who see me as an obligation? Or will I spend them seeing new places, making new friends? Maybe even finding the love I never allowed myself to have. For the very first time since I started explaining everything, Velda smiled. You are right, my dear. You have every right in this world to be happy. And if they cannot give you that happiness, then yes, you need to find it somewhere else. Exactly. I nodded. And I need you to promise me something else, Velda. When my sons come looking for you, after they read the letter, when they beg you to tell them where I went, I need you to tell them you do not know, because you really will not. I am not going to give you my exact address in Dallas until I am fully settled, until I am completely sure I do not want them to ever find me. Velda nodded with determination. I promise, Margarine, but I want you to keep in touch with me, Velda said, her voice steady but warm. You have to call me at least once a week, just so I know you are safe and doing well. Of course I nodded. You are the only real family I have left, Velda. You are the sister I never had, and the only person who genuinely cares about my well-being. We spent the rest of the morning fine-tuning all the small but important details. Velda would be in charge of contacting Nerese's sister to finalize the legal documents. I would call my cousin Arletta from the hospital phone to explain everything. And I still needed to withdraw the $8,000 from the bank and convert it to cash for the trip. You know what is the saddest thing about all this? I said softly to Velda as we packed away the last of my notes, that I am actually more excited about this new life than I have been about anything in the last 10 years. I feel like a teenager planning to run away from home, but instead of escaping controlling parents, I am running away from ungrateful children. It is not sad, my dear, she replied without hesitation. It is liberating. You have spent your entire adult life living for other people. It is finally time for you to live for yourself. That afternoon, I picked up the hospital phone and dialed Arletta's number. Her voice sounded surprised, but it carried that same warm familiarity I remembered. Margarine, what a lovely surprise. How are you, Cousin Arletta? I need to tell you something important, I began, the words catching in my throat for a moment. I am going through a very difficult time with my sons, and I need to make a radical change in my life. Is the invitation you extended years ago about visiting you in Dallas still open? She did not even pause. Of course it is, cousin. This house is far too big for me to live in alone. I would love to have some company. What is going on? Are your children all right? My children are perfectly fine, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. So fine, in fact, that they do not need their mother for anything. I will tell you everything once I get there. But I need to leave here as soon as I can. Come anytime you want margarine. There is a room waiting for you here for as long as you need it. When I hung up the phone, I felt as if I had just purchased a one-way ticket to freedom. Sunday arrived much faster than I expected. I woke at 6 o'clock in the morning, my stomach churning with a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. It was the last day I would be Torren and Dreven's mother. By tomorrow morning, I would simply be Margarine, a free woman beginning a brand new life. Nerisse noticed the tension in my body as she checked my vitals. "You look really tense today, Mrs. Stone. Is something worrying you?" "On the contrary, honey," I said with a smile. "I am excited. Today is the last day of a life that no longer serves me." Throughout the morning, I mentally rehearsed every step of the plan. Velda had withdrawn my $8,000 from the bank on Friday and kept it hidden safely at her home. Nerissa's sister had already prepared the power of attorney that would allow Velda to handle my legal affairs. My cousin Arletta was already waiting for me in Dallas with open arms. Everything on her end had been carefully arranged and prepared. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just as promised, Torren and Dreven arrived. Of course, only after lunch. Celisa came with Dreven, wearing a brand new coral-colored dress that likely cost more than I spend on groceries in 2 whole months. Carindra showed up 15 minutes later, apologizing because she had needed to finish a super important work call. "Mom, you look so much better," Torren said as he sat down in the chair farthest from my hospital bed. "The doctor told us you will probably be discharged sometime this week." "Yes," Carindra added quickly. "We kept saying it could not possibly have been as serious as the doctors made it sound. You have always been very strong, as if my strength was now being used as an excuse for their absence, as if resilience erased reality. And what plans do you have for when you leave the hospital?" Celise asked, flashing that well-rehearsed smile I had come to know too well. "I hope you understand, with our work schedules, it will be a little difficult for us to visit very often, but we can try to call you on weekends. Call me on weekends if there were no more pressing social obligations, of course. In fact, Dreven said, clearing his throat, Celise and I were talking, and we thought it might actually be a good idea for you to consider moving into one of those senior living places, you know, where there are nurses on site 24 hours a day, and all kinds of activities to keep you busy, a nursing home. They wanted to place me in a nursing home after abandoning me during a heart attack. There are some very nice ones," Celisa continued, clearly excited by the thought. "We visited one last weekend just to see. It is very clean, the food looks okay, and it is really not that expensive. It is about $2,000 a month," she added, "but with your pension and just a small contribution from us, it would be totally manageable." $2,000 a month, the exact same amount that Celise spent on her dress for that birthday party. Best of all, Torren chimed in, "You would be surrounded by people your own age. You could make friends, play cards, join group activities. It would be much better than being alone in that apartment," he added, "where nobody is around to help if something happens." I remained completely silent, watching my 2 sons speak about my life as if I were a spreadsheet to organize. As if I were a logistics issue they were solving in between social engagements. They were not asking me what I wanted. They were informing me of what they had already decided. And besides, Carindra added without a trace of hesitation, it would be much safer for everyone. If you ever had another emergency, the staff there could manage it immediately without any of us needing to abandon our jobs or important commitments. And there it was, the naked truth. They wanted to ensure that the next time I happened to be dying, It would not interfere with any of their important commitments. And when exactly were you planning to implement this brilliant plan? I asked them with a calmness that even surprised me. Well, there is no rush, Drevin replied, but maybe sometime in the next 2 or 3 months. That way, you have a chance to get used to the idea, and we can save up for the initial payment. 2 or 3 months. That was the grace period they offered me before officially exiling me to a place where they would not have to think about me unless it was convenient. You know what I said slowly, a strange smile forming on my lips? I think you are right. I think I do need to make a radical change in my life. All 4 of them visibly relaxed, clearly believing I had accepted their proposal. I am glad you see it that way, Mom Torren said. It is going to be what is best for everyone. Without a doubt, I echoed. It truly is going to be best for everyone. They spent the next hour discussing logistics, chatting among themselves about the details of the senior living facility, their busy work schedules, and the vacations they were planning for next month. I remained a silent spectator, observing the cheerful discussion about my own future. Celisa leaned toward Carindra, showing her photos on her phone from the birthday party. That same celebration that had just days earlier ranked higher than my life. Look, she said, this is the cake I ordered. Is it not beautiful? It cost $300, but it was worth every cent. $300, a quarter of what I spend on food for an entire month. And this, she continued swiping to another picture, is the dress Drevin gave me. Is it not divine? It is a designer piece. It cost $1,200, but my husband says I deserve it. She deserved it. She deserved a $1,200 dress, but I did not deserve their presence while I lay dying. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they began their usual goodbye routine. Carindra looked at her watch for the 3rd time in just 5 minutes. Celisa yawned in an exaggerated way. Drevin checked his phone without a hint of subtlety. Well, Mom Torren said, rising from his seat, I think it is time for us to go. We have dinner tonight with Carindra's parents, and we do not want to be late. Dinner with Carindra's parents, of course. That was clearly more important than staying a few extra minutes with me. It is all right, dears, I said softly. Go in peace. Each of them gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, brief, superficial, mechanical. The kind of kiss you give out of obligation. Celise even wiped her lips afterward, as though my skin had left something unpleasant behind. We will call you this week, Drevin promised from the doorway, and we will start researching more senior living facilities, Carindra added brightly. Take good care of yourself, mother-in-law, Celisa said with that overly sweet smile I had come to know too well, and do not worry about anything. We will take care of everything. They left, leaving behind the overpowering scent of Celisa's expensive perfume and the lingering echo of their empty, well-rehearsed promises. I remained alone in the room, staring at the door through which my children had just disappeared. In a few minutes, Velda would walk in to help me begin the final phase of the plan, and in just a few hours, I would be seated on a bus headed toward Dallas. By tomorrow morning, this hospital bed would be empty, and my children would be reading a letter that would change the course of their lives forever. For the very first time since the heart attack, I smiled genuinely, without restraint. It was not a smile of joy or relief. It was a smile of liberation, the smile of a woman who had finally decided that her own life was worth more than the emotional convenience of ungrateful children. Nerisse entered for the routine afternoon checkup. How are you feeling after the visit? Mrs. Stone, I feel free, Nerisse. For the first time in decades, I feel completely, totally free. Free. Free from what? Free from the illusion, I said softly, that I still matter to anyone besides myself. At 6 o'clock sharp in the evening, Velda arrived punctual as always. She carried a small suitcase with clothes she had packed from my apartment and the envelope containing the $8,000 in cash. "Ready for your new life, my dear?" she asked. "More than ready, Velda," I replied. "I think I have been waiting for this moment for years, without even realizing it." At 7 in the evening, as the hospital corridors began to empty and the night staff settled into their slower, quieter rhythm, Velda and I set the plan into motion. The plan that would change everything. It felt strange, almost exhilarating, to experience such a rush of adrenaline at 66 years old, as though I were a teenager sneaking away from home in the dark of night. But instead of running away from rules or restrictions, I was finally taking control of my life. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" Margarine Velda asked me one final time as she helped me dress in the clothes she had brought from my apartment. "Once we step outside, there will be no turning back." "Velda, I have gone 40 years without turning back," I said firmly. "From the moment I decided my children were more important than myself. I have been walking in only one direction away from me. This is the first time in decades that I feel like I am heading toward something, not escaping, not sacrificing, just moving forward." I put on the dark green dress I had bought the year before, one I had never worn. Because Carindra had once remarked that the color did not flatter me, but today it felt like exactly the right choice. It was the color of new hope, of rebirth, of a fresh, unburdened start. Nerisse came in at the exact moment we had coordinated. Her shift officially ended at 8, and she had agreed to help us with the most delicate part of the plan, leaving the hospital without any official documentation of my departure. "Mrs. Stone, are you truly ready for this?" Nerisse asked gently. "My sister is already waiting for you in the parking lot with all the necessary legal paperwork you need to sign." "Ready as I have ever been for anything in my entire life," I replied calmly. I took the letter from the nightstand drawer and placed it right on the pillow, deliberately and visibly. It was a white envelope, soft and unassuming, with my children's names carefully written in my neatest handwriting. It looked harmless, so simple. But I knew those 4 pages would shatter the illusion of comfort they had built by pushing me aside. "Velda, remember what we agreed. Wait until tomorrow afternoon to give it to them," I reminded her. "That way, I'll already be in Dallas and settled before the chaos unfolds." "I remember perfectly, my dear," she said, holding my hand with warmth. "Tomorrow at exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I will go to Torren's house and hand them the letter. And when they ask where you are, I will say exactly what you told me, that I do not know." We moved down the hospital corridors as if we were just ordinary visitors, leaving after regular visiting hours. Nerisse had chosen the perfect time. There was just enough foot traffic to blend in, but not so much that anyone would stop to notice an older woman with a small suitcase. In the parking lot, we were met by Sarah Nerisse's sister. She appeared to be in her 40s, with a professional air, serious but warm, and she extended her hand to me with respectful confidence. "Mrs. Stone, I'm Sarah Langford, attorney at law. My sister has explained your situation to me, and I want you to know that you have my full support. What you are doing takes immense strength and courage." "Thank you, counselor," I said with a nod. "Do you have everything ready?" "Right here," she replied, handing me the documents. "This power of attorney grants Mrs. Johnson full authority over your financial and legal affairs in this city. She can manage your belongings, terminate leases, sell furniture, and resolve any administrative matters that arise. I've also prepared this legal statement certifying that you are mentally competent and are making this decision fully aware of the implications. It ensures legal protection for you. Under the yellowish glow of the parking lot's old lights, I signed every paper slowly and deliberately. With each signature, I felt myself moving farther from the life I had endured and inching closer to the life I had chosen. And if my children try to use these papers against me, I asked carefully, to claim I'm mentally unstable. Impossible, Sarah replied without hesitation. I have 2 witnesses. I have the medical file from the hospital proving you are in full control of your mental faculties. And I have detailed notes confirming that this is a deliberate, well-considered decision, not an impulsive one. Moreover, you are an elderly adult, and you have the absolute legal right to determine how and where you want to live. Velda accompanied me to the bus terminal. The taxi ride was quiet, filled with a peaceful stillness, each of us submerged in our own thoughts. When we arrived at the terminal, I purchased a ticket for the night bus heading to Dallas, departing at exactly 10 o'clock that evening. It's a 12-hour trip, the terminal employee explained kindly. It will arrive tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Perfect, I replied with calm certainty. By the time my children received the letter I had left behind, I would already be more than 400 miles away, stepping into a new chapter of my life. Margarine, said Velda, as we waited together in the terminal's modest waiting room. I just want you to know how incredibly proud I am of you. I don't know many women your age who would have the strength and courage to start all over again. I'm not starting from scratch. Velda, I answered with a soft smile. I'm starting with 66 years of life experience, with $8,000 in my pocket, and with the absolute certainty that I deserve more than crumbs of attention. When my bus was finally announced over the intercom, we hugged tightly like the sisters we had truly become after so many years of unwavering friendship. Take good care of yourself, my dear Velda, whispered her voice trembling, and please call me the moment you arrive so I know you're safe and well. I'll call you every single week, Velda. You are the only real family I have left, the only person who has ever truly made me feel like my well-being actually matters. I boarded the bus with my small suitcase and a heart full of something I had not felt in many years. It wasn't quite happiness. It was something deeper, something more rooted. It was dignity restored and reclaimed. I found my assigned seat by the window and settled in. As the bus slowly pulled away from the city where I had spent my entire life, I took out my phone and composed one final message to my children. I had decided during the taxi ride to the station that I needed to send them something. Not to explain myself, the letter already did that, but to make it clear that this goodbye was final. Torren and Dreven. By the time you read this, I will already be far away. On the hospital bed, you'll find a letter that explains everything. Do not look for me. This is my final decision. Be happy with your busy lives and your carefully defined priorities. I will find happiness without you. Margarine. I hit send. Then I immediately turned the phone off, tucked it deep into my bag. I didn't want to see their frantic replies, their guilt-laced excuses, their last-minute pleas for forgiveness. They had had a lifetime to show me love, and again they had chosen indifference. The bus drove on through the long, dark road, taking me mile after mile away from a life built on unrecognized sacrifices and closer to a life blooming with possibility. Outside the window, I watched the glowing lights of small towns pass by. homes where perhaps other mothers were sitting at dinner tables with children who truly valued them, places where families said goodbye with real affection and promises that were kept. At 2 o'clock in the morning, while most of the passengers were asleep, I sat wide awake thinking about all that I had left behind and everything that was now waiting for me. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel guilt. What I felt was something I had not experienced in decades: hope. My cousin Arletta had told me during our call that Dallas was a beautiful city filled with lively parks and welcoming markets. She said the weather was mild, the people warm. "Here, you can begin again, Margarine," she said gently. "Here, no one knows your past, and you are free to write a new one." Writing a new story. I liked that idea. For the very first time in my entire adult life, I was going to be the true protagonist of my own story, not a secondary background character in the lives of my children. The bus rolled steadily forward, carrying me toward my long-awaited freedom. I arrived in Dallas at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, exactly as I had planned and calculated. The sun shone with an intensity I had not seen in years, as though even the sky itself was celebrating my rebirth. My cousin Arletta was waiting for me at the terminal, greeting me with a radiant smile that instantly reminded me of my mother, her aunt, who always used to say that true family was not only the one sharing your blood, but the one sharing both your pain and your joy. "Margarine, what an absolute joy to see you," she said, embracing me with a warmth my own children had not offered me in decades. "You look tired from the trip, but there is something different in your eyes, almost as if you left a very heavy burden somewhere along the way." "That's right, cousin," I replied, with a small but certain smile. "I left 40 years of burden in a hospital more than 400 miles away from here." During the car ride to her home, Arletta spoke enthusiastically about daily life in Dallas, about the open-air markets where fresh vegetables could be bought for pennies, about the spacious parks where women our age gathered every morning to exercise and socialize, about community dance classes for seniors, and even about part-time job opportunities for people with long years of experience. "Here, no one will judge you for beginning again at 66, she assured me. "This city is overflowing with stories of renewal and rebirth." Her house was exactly as she had described it, large, filled with light, and surrounded by a backyard where roses, jasmine, and a lemon tree perfumed the air with their fragrance. The room she prepared for me had a window overlooking the garden and a bed with soft white sheets scented faintly of lavender. "This will be your home for as long as you need it, cousin," she said. "And if you decide to stay forever, it would be an honor for me." That very first afternoon, while Arletta prepared a homemade meal that instantly transported me back to the flavors of childhood, I received the call I had been waiting for. It was Velda, Margarine. I just delivered the letter. It all unfolded exactly as you had imagined. "Tell me everything, Velda. I need to know how they reacted." I arrived at Torren's house at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just as we had arranged. They were all sitting down to a quiet family dinner. When I told them I had a letter from you, Carindra rolled her eyes and said, "It is probably another one of her dramatizations, just because we have not visited her in 2 days." I laughed bitterly on the other end of the line. Even my letters they dismissed as dramatizations. But when Torren started reading, his entire face changed. He went pale as a sheet and called out your name, Margarine. He began reading aloud, and suddenly everyone fell completely silent. When he finished, Celise screamed, "This cannot be real. Mothers do not abandon their children." And Drevin immediately started dialing your number in desperation. And what did you tell them when they asked where I was? Exactly what you asked me to. I told them I truly did not know, that you had only asked me to deliver the letter, nothing more, that you had not revealed where you were going. Torren became furious. He yelled that it was impossible for me not to know anything. He shouted that we had been very good friends for too long. But I stood firm. And how did they look when you left? I asked, holding my breath. Devastated, Margarine. Utterly devastated. But it wasn't sadness I saw on their faces. It was panic. The raw panic of realizing they had lost something forever, and that the fault was entirely their own. That night, lying in my new bed in my new city, with the gentle fragrance of jasmine drifting in through the open window, I saw dozens of missed calls and text messages flashing across my phone's screen from my children. I did not answer any of them, but I read every single word. Mom, please call us. We can talk about this. Torren, Margarine. This is ridiculous. Mothers cannot just vanish. Carindra, Mom. I know you are upset, but this is extreme. Please come back and we will fix everything. Drevin. Mother-in-law. I think you are overreacting. We do love you. We just have busy lives. Celise. The messages did not stop. They continued for days, becoming more desperate, more pleading, more frantic, slowly unraveling into the terrifying awareness of just how much they had truly lost. Mom, I went to the hospital and found your bed empty. The doctor said you left without being discharged. This is dangerous for your health. Torren. Please, Mom, at least let us know you are okay. We are really worried. Drevin, Margarine. We have been thinking and you are right about many things. We can change. Please come back. Carindra. But it was too late for promises of change. It was too late for regret. They had had 40 long years to change, 40 years to value me, 40 years to prove to me that my life mattered, and I was not going to grant them a second chance to repeat their indifference. 3 weeks after my arrival in Dallas, I had already established a new rhythm, one that filled me with a peace I had not known in decades. I woke up early each morning to walk in the park with a group of women my age who welcomed me as though I had always belonged among them. I found a part-time job in a small downtown boutique, assisting ladies who appreciated my experience and my sense of style. In the afternoons, I attended painting classes at the Cultural Center, something I had always dreamed of doing, but never dared because I had been too busy sacrificing myself for the sake of my children. You look 10 years younger, Margarine Arletta told me one afternoon as we painted together in her sunny garden. It is incredible what freedom can do for a woman. She was right. I felt reborn, like the 66 years of sacrifice had only been training for this new life, where I could finally breathe as myself. A month later, I met Ellery in a dance class. He was a 70-year-old widower, retired with kind eyes and an easy laugh. There was nothing romantic between us, but it was refreshing, comforting, even to share the company of a man who treated me with respect, admiration, and sincere appreciation for my presence. Margarine. He told me one afternoon after class, as we rested, I do not know what brought you to Dallas, but I sincerely hope it was something good, because your arrival has already been something good for all of us. My children's messages had gradually shifted, from desperate to pleading, from pleading to angry, from angry to resigned. The last one I had received a week earlier read, Mom, if this is truly what you want, then we will respect it. We just want to know you are safe and happy. We have realized many things since you left, and you were right about everything you said. We only hope someday you can forgive us. Torren. Forgive them. Perhaps one day I might. but forget never. And I would certainly never go back to being the mother who begged for crumbs of attention. 6 months after arriving in Dallas, as I sat drinking coffee in the garden on a bright sunny morning, I reflected on everything I had gained by losing my children. I had gained dignity, self-respect, genuine friendships, new experiences, and the priceless chance to live my final years exactly as I wished, not as others dictated. My phone rang. It was Velda with her weekly call. "How are you, my dear? You sound happier and happier each time I hear your voice. I am better than ever, Velda. Yesterday, I enrolled in a literature course at the university. Can you imagine? At 66 years old, I am finally going to study something I always loved, but never allowed myself the chance to pursue, because I was too busy raising children who never truly valued me. It fills me with joy to hear you like this, Margarine." And them, "Have you heard anything?" she asked. "I see them sometimes posting photos on social media," I replied. "They continue with their busy lives, their glamorous parties, their urgent commitments. The difference is that now I no longer have to pretend I care." That night, as I wrote in the diary I had started keeping, I reflected on the bravest decision of my entire life. It had not been easy. There had been moments of loneliness and moments when I missed the illusion of belonging to a family that cherished me. Yet those moments came less and less often, replaced instead by the deep satisfaction of finally living for myself. "Dear Diary," I wrote, "Today I turned 67. It is the first birthday I celebrate without waiting for my children to call, without feeling the sting of disappointment from their silence. Arletta organized a small gathering for me with our friends from the park, and for the very first time in decades, I felt genuinely loved and valued. This is the life I deserve. This is the life I should have allowed myself all along." I closed the diary and looked out the window at the garden bathed in moonlight. Tomorrow would bring another day of my new life, another day of freedom, another day of simply being Margarine, not the abandoned mother, not the sacrificed woman, but a whole complete woman living on her own terms. And for the first time in 40 long years, that was finally enough. As I sit here now, sharing my journey with you, I realize that sometimes the most powerful stories of resilience and dignity are not found in novels or in the so-called best revenge stories. They are lived by ordinary women who decide to stop begging for love and instead start living for themselves. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have chosen to stay and keep waiting for affection that never arrived? Or would you have taken the risk to walk away and begin again? I truly want to hear your thoughts and your own experiences. Please share them in the comments. I will be reading them with an open heart. If this story spoke to you, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Press the notification bell so you do not miss the next story. On the screen, you will find a link to another video that I believe you will deeply enjoy, one of the stories I am most proud of creating. Thank you so much for your support, and I sincerely hope my words inspire you to reflect on your own life. Until we meet again in the next story.